So we've talked framework and approaches, and now let's get to outcomes and measurement. So let's do a section on measurement. So we've talked about this before, but this is Philip Kotler, and he's making a comment on specialization in marketing. And one of the challenges that we have, and we've talked about, is that because the tactical elements of marketing are so discrete and specialized, that different vendors and different skill sets are required to do that. And what happens is that people don't look at the big strategic picture or issues because they're kind of focused on their individual area that they have expertise or knowledge in. Well, the challenge in marketing is that you have to link all of those together. And so that will become one of the challenges that we see in measurement going forward. So one of the challenges that marketing has is basically the return on the marketing investment. So a CEO might ask, what am I getting for that spend that I'm doing on the TV campaign or the marketing, an advertising campaign or something like that? And the challenge is that metrics are often a challenge in marketing and they're not really linked. And so, there's some famous quotes like, if you're not measuring, you're not marketing. And so we really have to look at linking that measurement component to our marketing strategy and tactics. So one question that a lot of companies ask themselves in regards to this is, what could you stop doing and get a better result? And the challenge is that for many companies, this is a big challenge because they don't know where the return's coming from or what really is causing or what's creating the cause and effect relationship for how behavior is being impacted. A lot of times, marketing is kind of seen as that softer component in all of the business functions, and really there's probably less accountability, perceived less accountability for marketing. This is changing now, but marketing basically gets a bad rap in terms of that whole accountability issue. So we're constantly trying to, or hopefully trying to improve and getting better results from any of our marketing spend and getting better results from the marketing budget we have. And this is a famous quote in terms of measurement and performance measurement. If we can't measure it, we can't improve it. So we have to be able to measure the results of our efforts in marketing to kind of get over some of that perception and image, and also actually know how to get greater return on our marketing investment and improve. Quick definition on marketing metrics. It's really a set of measures that help us quantify, compare, and interpret performance. It's no different than any other measurement, but there's some specific things that we link to marketing activities, and basically that's marketing metrics. A challenge is that linkage between marketing and marketing results and what am I getting for the money. But at the same time, marketing often gets blamed for bad results. So, that's evidenced by this right here, is that the average tenure for CMOs at the top companies is 22 months, and that's very short, right? So even though that linkage, or maybe it's a result of not having that linkage, that's where the blame falls on marketing. And so we'll talk about some ways on how marketing professionals can kind of get over that and provide a better performance measurement system to help address some of that and actually kind of prove the worth, or hopefully prove the worth of some of their marketing efforts. Okay, so we've talked about this a lot and had a lot of examples on this, but there's so many channels that are new, so many new tactics, new markets, new customers, etc. And that really just increases the need for better measurement. So, we can spend our marketing dollars in like almost infinite ways now. Well, we need to make sure that we're getting return on those dollars we're spending. And as we've talked about, there's more and more pressure to justify or prove that the decisions that you're making as a marketer is creating return for the company. So that's a key element that puts way more pressure on marketers today. So the complexity we have and the amount of measures and the need for measurement is really magnified by now as we're moving in the age of the customer. The customer really has the power in most of the relationships, and that also creates more pressure. So with the customer having the power, it really is that need for us to prove ourselves to the company in terms of that return on investment is even greater. Because the consumer is empowered, really we want to focus on kind of 4 elements in terms of our marketing imperatives to really provide value back to the customer in a different way. And you can really look at it here. It's this, that we want to transform the customer experience. We want to get better insights and use our data to get better insights. We want to make sure that we're kind of moving to some of the trends and technologies that are existing, like mobile. And really there's kind of this general emphasis moving towards digital. But the one here that's really important in this customer is the data and availability of data we have allows us to ultimately have better measurement. So let's focus on that in terms of the kind of the data elements and what do we need to do to get better metrics and measurement. But for us to have effective measurement, we need to make sure that we have people that are competent that actually can manage the measurement or actually do the analytics, either from an outsourced, third-party vendor or a talent inside our own company to do that. And the other challenge is that, right, it's that garbage in, garbage out from a data element, that we need to make sure that the data that we have is quality, that the data isn't giving us false results or false outcomes, that we're using the data effectively. So the two things that we need to have an effective measurement system is we need the labor and resources and knowledge and skill set to do it, but we need to make sure the data comes and we have the technology available to provide the data for us to have a better understanding of kind of that cause and effect relationship from a measurement standpoint. Okay, so this looks at what companies are thinking in terms of measurement within their organizations. And you can see is like companies who actually measure the efficiency, effectiveness of various campaigns, and there's measurement activities that are going on in most organizations. But the surprising one here is that, second from the bottom is that not all companies are measuring that return on marketing investment. And that's surprising because that's really critical, that you want to make sure that you're spending your marketing dollars efficiently and effectively. And so measuring that return, I would argue should be 100% of companies should be doing that. So this is from a Forrester survey, and it's just looking at like what companies are measuring in terms of customer interactions and customer-based metrics. And you can see it's fairly split across the board, and it just kind of gives you some ideas about some of the customer metrics that companies are measuring. Okay, so this is just a framework where it looks at like how companies can assess their measurement capabilities, and it really divides these capabilities up into 5 main areas. And you can see here and look at the supporting data points here across strategy, the organization resources, technology, metrics and KPIs, and the organization and how they're activating it. So this is a framework that is, one generic framework, and a lot of companies have these, that really looks at our assessment of our current capabilities, where we need and where there's kind of going to be a need to invest in different parts of the area. And so we'll talk and break some of this down. So if you look at companies that do those 5 areas where they can be, the top companies are considered really a measurement pro, and there's some companies that, don't do the very limited, basic amount, and really they're considered the laggard. Most companies are somewhat in the middle, right? They're kind of do some of the things, but they're doing all of the things. I think that measurement in general is an area where companies don't put enough resources or don't have the capabilities maybe to do the best that they can be or should be, and that really creates some inefficiencies in their marketing as a whole. And so, it's hard to look at that as like a big investment criteria. Let's invest in measurement, because it's really harder to get back from a measurement standpoint there to return on that measurement investment. But for most companies that we see, that there's a great need for improvement in their ability to measure, capture data, etc. This just shows an example of like a lot of the companies that are the specialized companies across different marketing tactics. And those companies themselves are involved in measurement or capturing data. So there's lots of help and support out there, especially in some of the specialized function or especially tactical marketing service firms that assist and help from a data capture marketing measurement standpoint. By having these firms that support, that really can help out in your marketing measurement, really you need to look at 2 specific capabilities: your marketing specific reporting, the diagnostic benchmarks, the data, where that comes from, and then something that actually creates real-time data. And by having these strategic partners and maybe these vendors, that lets you look at metrics tied to business outcome. It looks at like what your marketing spend and activity is, and really allows you to create a more robust measurement system by utilizing these specific types of companies. So you can see here really the difference between the lower performers and the higher performers is really emphasizing on creating that infrastructure and capability and investing more in that. It gives you ultimately better performance, and also investing in some of the tactics that maybe aren't as actually directly measurable, so like the branding and customer equity from a long-term performance standpoint. And those are often the softer spends, right? There's not necessarily a one-to-one attribution in terms of the dollar you spent on branding or investing in some of your customer or customer development. But this really is a kind of a generalization that companies that spend more on infrastructure and capabilities and some of kind of the softer branding and customer equity components actually have higher performance than the lower performers. So one of the challenges from a marketing performance, to achieve your best marketing performance, we've talked about really is this data and infrastructure in support of measurement, right? And so most companies can't really demonstrate the causal relationship between what they're doing from a tactical standpoint and what that outcome is. Especially, we've talked about, because of all the complexity of all the marketing activities that exist. But this lack of existing data or ability or the infrastructure to actually supply that data is a challenge for most companies. Okay, I put this slide in just as kind of a framework for marketing measurement. And really I wanted to look at two definitional things here in terms of the middle box. It's metrics. So just so we have our own common framework on metrics, it's like really the set of performance measures as to how we are going to monitor and evaluate how we're meeting our objectives, right? It's no different than any other performance measurement definition, and you guys have probably had this in many other classes. But I also wanted to look at the definition of KPI, and really that's the key metrics or the special metrics that really answer how we're doing or how we are going to meet our objectives, really the metrics that are tied to our specific objectives that we are trying to achieve. But this is pretty good in terms of this framework, in terms of kind of tying all the elements together from a performance measurement system. So companies really do marketing measurement in two ways, and probably a combination of both of these ways. They look at it from a top-down standpoint, where they set the goal and objective, and then they match the metrics to that. Or the other side is they come bottom up, is they start with the data and then they try to get insights from the data. So really you want to do a combination of both, like starting with some of the discrete details and trying to draw insights from that you can tailor up, and then really like tracing it down from some of your key objectives and then driving your measurements or KPIs from those. So you really need a combination of both of these methods.